Okay, so I want to spend a minute talking about one of the most important tools you're going to be using in this class, and that's the edit poly or the editable poly. So I'm going to build a quick box. I'm going to go into the modify panel. I'm just going to make this 90 by 90 by 90, make it a cube. No particular reason, just because it's clean and that's it. I'm going to leave it as it is, so all the segments are just a 1, so there's no geometry in here. Hit J to get rid of those brackets. All right, and so what I want to do here is to show you a couple things about this tool that we're going to use. So let's go to the pull down menu and go to Edit Poly. This is going to be, there's an edit mesh and editable patch, edit normals, and edit poly. What we want to look at is this one right here, edit polys. And what that'll do is get us to the actual base elements of this, what this 3D art and animation and games is all about, and that's the vertex, the edge, borders, which we'll get into, polygon or quads, polygons mostly, hopefully always quads, but that always takes some time. Sometimes you make shapes that are more than 4 sides. 4 sides are our goal, as I've said before. We want to work in quads. We want to try to see if we can actually get our quads to match up so that we can do ring selections or loop selections based upon our object and shapes. As we get more complex in our modeling, you'll see that the functionality of using quads just becomes ever more present and ever more important. And then there's the actual element, which is basically the contiguously welded object that's actually in the sub-object level. I go to the pull down menu right here, and I've still got the things all right there. Clicking through, you can see that it goes and matches. One of the things that's going to be key to notice is that this vertex icon is right here. It's the same with the edge, border, and all down the line. And that's important because that tells you what's happening in your object. And if you are in sub-object mode and you have nothing selected and you go up the chain with something, there's a good chance that nothing will get affected. And that's because you've got to be either in the top level of the object, which is basically where it says edit poly, and you'll know that because it's blue in the actual stack. This will actually allow you to actually do things to the global side of the object, and these are the things will allow you to do to the smaller side of the object. And as we go into more complex objects, this will make a lot more sense. In the meantime, let's just talk about some basic stuff that's in the actual polygon mode. I'm going to grab one polygon just by clicking on it with the left mouse button, and I'm going to scroll up here into the edit geometry. No, we're going to go to edit polygon tabs. These tabs float sometimes depending on just usage of the software. It's not always clear that it's going to be the second or third option from the top of this scrolling menu. If you have a hard time finding it, you can always extend this menu out, and that'll give you 2, 3, 4. If you have a big monitor, I've seen people, and I've done it myself, is have this thing all the way out to make sure I have all the buttons laid out in front of me. There are some modifiers that just have so many tools that you just have to have it all out just so you can see everything. So if I want to have 2 rows where I can see everything, what I'm looking for is the edit polygons menu set. You can see where you see insert, vertex, extrude, outline, bevel, insert, bridge, flip, so on and so forth. We're just going to talk about the extrude, outline, bevel, and inset. These all 4 are pretty much similar functioning in similar ways. Excuse me. We have the extrude and the outline, which actually in conjunction become the bevel. We have the inset, which is basically the second step of the bevel. So the outline and the inset are basically similar, but base functions of what actually happens here. I know that makes no sense yet, but let's go ahead and prove what I'm talking about, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So right now I'm going to go ahead and hit extrude, and if I click on that, the button becomes blue, and that means that it's an active function. I go onto my selection, and you'll see that I have a plus with this weird growth kind of 70s trippy look. If I left click and pull, you'll see that I'm actually extending the face out. Now I'm going to hit F4 so you can see the wireframe, and you'll see that it actually creating geometry. So let's go ahead and do that on this side, and click and drag, and you'll see that I'm going inside. So right now I've actually have these faces that are actually basically overlapping, and it's creating a parallax view. I'm going to right click so I can fix this, and that's going to deactivate this. So I'm going to go into the move tool, or W on my keyboard and just move that in the X. Oops. Move that in X, and that'll actually get the actual overlap. You want to avoid this. This is not actually good modeling techniques. It does create problems with animation and rendering, so be wary of that. And so now that is the actual extrude. Let's go here and click on the outline. You'll see that it has a different kind of icon. There's icons for basically every function. So outline is just basically giving us a scaling kind of functionality, and there's some good uses for it because it's managing it on the actual level of on the direction of the face. At this point, that'll make use. I don't use it a lot myself, but there are times where it actually does become real handy. On the inset, what it's going to do is create geometry and just scale it inside. So it's basically like it's one extra step of the outline. It creates geometry and allows you to actually scale it or into the actual angle of the face. Once it's face, you can still scale it and create smaller shapes. You can and modify it as you need to. Just be wary of the overlapping faces. Now let's go into bevel, and what we'll do is we'll left click, and then I'm going to let go, and it's going to allow me to actual scale. So what we have is the extrude with the outline put together, or you could say it's the inset with the extrude put together. So, but you get the idea that I'm talking about. What is important here is to notice that we have quads all the way around our object, and now this is actually called a ring selection, a ring loop. And what we can do is click on this, and I'm going to hold shift, and you'll see that everything turns green when I put my mouse over the adjacent polygon. If I move it over here, it disappears, but if I put it within any adjacent polygon, you'll see that it gives me a selection, and the selection continues all the way around until it meets either a quad or where there is no more quad connection. Just thinking about how clean the connections are here, and when you apply that idea, if you can follow that line all the way around, it's going to allow you to grab a selection. So what I'm doing here is clicking on this, holding shift, and just clicking again, and it gives me that ring selection or the ring loop selection. And so this is the power of quads. If we break this up and actually change it to where it's an odd shape, so let's go in here. I'm going to right click and go to cut tool real quick. And I'm just going to drop this into a weird shape here. Let's make sure this is one vertex. It is. So now I have an odd number of vertices on one side versus the other. And so if I click on this one face and I hold shift and go in here, and you'll see that it still collects through. Well, there's a change right there. And so there's where it actually gets a confusion about where the actual connection of the quads are. And this is how it follows it as best that it can. So sometimes you'll get some good results, sometimes you won't. Sometimes, more times than not, it'll be interesting. So let's see if I can undo all of that, at least to the cut. There we go. All right, so the next thing I want to do is have you guys go ahead and just do the same kind of thing and just build off of this shape. So one more function is I can right click and I can actually see the same edit polygon tools that are right here. So what I want to do now is, instead of actually just hitting on the extrude, I'm going to click on this box right here and get the options. The option box right here is the thing that gives us a lot more specific control. So I can actually get to 3 decimal points worth of data or incrementation on this. Right click and go to bevel. It's even easier to control what's going on. One of the things that I love about having this setup, so if you know you have a certain amount of change that you want to do in terms of a bevel or extrude, you can hit plus and reproduce that same values to the faces that you have currently selected. If I hit plus one more time, it's going to probably start overlapping. I'm going to hit Q to go to select mode, and it is. So I'm going to basically backtrack that. There we go. And hit OK. All right, so I want you to play around with that as you go. I promise you that you're going to find more success if you actually choose the options box versus just clicking on the button and going after it, but try to work on both ways and figure out how these tools work. When you're done, I want to see these posted on the classroom stream.